Moving to Charleston was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter in my life. After a turbulent year filled with heartbreak and disappointment, I needed a fresh start. So when I found the historic house at the end of Magnolia Street, it felt like fate. The realtor described it as full of character and charm, and I was immediately captivated by its old-fashioned elegance. The house was a beautiful relic of the past, with its grand columns and wraparound porch. As I walked through the rooms for the first time, I marveled at the high ceilings, intricate woodwork, and vintage wallpaper that seemed to whisper stories from a bygone era. Each room held a certain eerie charm, a testament to the generations that had called this place home before me. Despite its beauty, there was something unsettling about the house. Maybe it was the way the shadows danced in the corners or how the floorboards creaked under my weight, but an undercurrent of unease tugged at the edges of my mind. I brushed it off as nerves and the natural adjustment to a new environment. On my first night, I settled into bed with a sense of optimism. The silence of the house was profound, only broken by the occasional groan of the old wood. As I drifted off to sleep, a faint noise caught my attention. It was almost imperceptible, like a distant echo of laughter. I sat up, straining to listen, but the sound faded away, leaving me to wonder if I had imagined it. The next few days were a whirlwind of unpacking and settling in. During the day, the house felt almost welcoming, bathed in sunlight and filled with the scent of fresh paint. But as night fell, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter returned, clearer this time, seeming to come from above. My heart pounded in my chest as I lay still, trying to pinpoint its source. It had to be the house settling or maybe an old pipe resonating through the walls. Yet the feeling of being watched persisted. Every creak and groan seemed to amplify the sense of an unseen presence. My initial excitement was slowly being overshadowed by a creeping dread. Something was not right, and deep down I knew I couldn't ignore it for long. It was the third night in the house when I first heard it clearly. I was drifting in and out of sleep when a faint, melodic sound pulled me back to consciousness. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, a distant echo of children's laughter. But as I lay there in the darkness, the sound persisted, growing slightly louder, yet still distant. My eyes snapped open, heart pounding in the stillness of my room. I strained to listen, my senses heightened by the eerie silence that followed the laughter. It seemed to come from the attic above me. I shook my head, convincing myself that it was just the house settling, or perhaps an overactive imagination fueled by the stress of moving. After all, old houses like this one were notorious for strange noises. The next day, I tried to forget about it, busying myself with unpacking and arranging furniture. But the memory of that laughter lingered at the back of my mind, like a shadow that refused to dissipate. By nightfall, the house felt different. The once charming creaks and groans now seemed to echo ominously through the halls. That night, the laughter returned. It was faint but unmistakable, floating down from the attic as I lay in bed. I sat up, heart racing, straining to hear every nuance of the sound. The laughter was soft and childlike, an unsettling contrast to the heavy silence of the house. I tried to rationalize it again. Perhaps it was the wind or an animal in the attic. But deep down, I knew those explanations didn't fit. The following nights brought more of the same. The laughter grew more frequent and distinct, piercing the quiet of the house. Each time I heard it, a chill ran down my spine, and sleep became harder to come by. I found myself lying awake, listening for the faintest sound, my mind racing with possibilities. By the end of the week, I was on edge. The laughter was no longer a fleeting sound, but a nightly occurrence that filled me with dread. It was as if the house was alive, its history seeping into my present. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The fear gnawed at me, making it impossible to relax or feel at home. Something was in that attic, and I had to find out what. The thought of going up there terrified me, but the uncertainty was even worse. I needed answers, and the only way to get them was to confront whatever was hiding above me. Driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, I finally mustered the courage to investigate the attic. The laughter had become a nightly torment, and I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. Armed with a flashlight and my phone, I made my way to the narrow staircase leading up to the attic, each step creaking ominously under my weight. At the top of the stairs, I hesitated, my hand resting on the door handle. The air felt heavier up here, as if the attic was holding its breath, waiting for me to enter. With a deep breath, I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The musty scent of old wood and dust filled my nostrils as I stepped inside, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The attic was a time capsule of forgotten memories. Dust-covered furniture and old trunks were scattered around, and cobwebs hung like tattered curtains from the rafters. My flashlight illuminated a collection of antique toys, wooden dolls, tin soldiers, and a small rocking horse. Their faded colors and worn edges gave them an eerie, nostalgic charm, as if they were relics from a childhood long past. As I moved deeper into the attic, the feeling of being watched intensified. Shadows seemed to shift just out of sight, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards under my feet. I couldn't shake the sense that I was intruding on something sacred and forgotten. Then, in a corner of the attic, partially hidden behind an old trunk, I found it. A small, leather-bound diary. The cover was worn and faded, but the name Emily was still legible, etched into the leather with a child's careful hand. My heart raced as I picked it up, the leather cool and smooth against my fingers. I flipped open the diary, the pages brittle and yellowed with age. The handwriting was delicate and neat, the ink faded but still readable. The first few entries were innocent enough, filled with the mundane details of a young girl's life, playing with her toys, her favorite games, her dreams and fears. But as I continued reading, a darker undercurrent began to emerge. Emily wrote about strange occurrences in the house, about whispers in the night and shadows that moved on their own. She described the laughter too, eerily similar to what I had been hearing. The diary entries became increasingly frantic, the neat handwriting giving way to hurried, scrawled notes. Emily spoke of a presence in the house, something she couldn't see but could always feel. My hands trembled as I read the final entries. Emily's fear was palpable, her words a desperate plea for help. She wrote about a night when the laughter became overwhelming, when she felt a cold hand on her shoulder and saw a figure standing at the foot of her bed. The last entry ended abruptly, mid-sentence, as if she had been interrupted. I closed the diary, my mind racing. The laughter, the shadows, Emily's tragic story. It was all connected. I had to know more to understand what had happened to her. But the more I uncovered, the more the house seemed to close in around me, its secrets a heavy burden pressing down on my soul. With the attic's musty air thickening around me, I sat down on an old trunk and continued reading Emily's diary. The flickering beam of my flashlight cast eerie shadows on the pages, making the words seem to dance with a life of their own. As I delved deeper into Emily's world, I felt a profound connection to the little girl who had once called this house her home. Emily's early entries were filled with the innocence of childhood, descriptions of her favorite dolls, her adventures in the garden, and her close bond with her parents. She wrote about her birthdays, the friends she played with, and the dreams she had for the future. It was a window into a simpler, happier time. But as I turned the pages, a darker narrative began to unfold. Emily started to write about strange occurrences in the house. She mentioned hearing whispers at night, footsteps echoing in empty hallways, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. The laughter that haunted my nights had plagued Emily as well, filling her with the same dread that now gripped me. Emily's writing grew increasingly frantic. She spoke of shadows that moved on their own and of toys that seemed to shift positions when no one was looking. She wrote about the cold spots in her room and the sensation of icy fingers brushing against her skin. Her parents dismissed her fears as childish imagination, but Emily was convinced something sinister lurked within the house. The diary entries took a chilling turn as Emily described a night when the laughter became unbearable. She was awakened by the sound, louder and closer than ever before. Terrified, she hid under her covers, but the laughter persisted, accompanied by soft whispers that seemed to come from all around her. When she finally gathered the courage to peek out, she saw a dark figure standing at the foot of her bed, its eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Emily's terror was palpable in her hurried, scrawled notes. She pleaded for help, for someone to believe her. She described how the figure appeared more frequently, always accompanied by the laughter. The entries became disjointed, filled with fear and desperation. She felt trapped, unable to escape the presence that haunted her. My heart ached for Emily, her fear, her loneliness, and her desperate need for someone to believe her resonated deeply with me. I realized that the laughter I had been hearing was not just a haunting echo but a cry for help. Emily's spirit was still here, trying to communicate, to tell her story. The final entries were the most disturbing. Emily wrote about a night when the laughter reached a fever pitch. She felt a cold hand on her shoulder and heard a voice whisper her name. She saw the dark figure again, this time closer, its face twisted into a sinister grin. I closed the diary, my mind racing. Emily's life had been cut short by something dark and malevolent. Her spirit was trapped in this house, reliving the terror that had consumed her. The laughter was a manifestation of her fear, a chilling reminder of her tragic fate. I had to do something. I couldn't just ignore what I had learned. Emily's story needed to be told. Her spirit needed to be set free. But how? The thought of confronting whatever haunted this house filled me with dread. Yet I knew I had no choice. Emily's spirit was reaching out to me, begging for help, and I couldn't turn my back on her. The nights grew colder and more oppressive as the laughter became a constant presence in the house. It was no longer a distant echo but a tangible force that filled every corner. Whispers accompanied the laughter, unintelligible but unmistakably sinister. Shadows seemed to move with a will of their own, flickering at the edge of my vision, creating an atmosphere of unrelenting dread. Determined to end this nightmare, I prepared to confront whatever haunted this house. I carried Emily's diary with me, hoping it would give me strength or some form of protection. As I ascended the stairs to the attic one final time, my flashlight flickered, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the house itself was holding its breath. In the attic, the temperature dropped sharply. The laughter was louder here, more piercing, accompanied by whispers that seemed to mock my every move. I stood in the center of the room, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon me. "Emily?" I called out, my voice trembling. "I'm here to help you. Please, show yourself." The laughter stopped abruptly, plunging the attic into a silence that was almost deafening. My flashlight flickered again, and for a moment I saw her, a small, translucent figure standing by the old rocking horse. Emily's eyes were wide with fear, her mouth forming silent words. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "What happened to you, Emily?" I asked softly. The air around me grew colder, and the whispers intensified. Emily pointed to a dark corner of the attic, where an old, dusty chest sat half-buried in shadows. With trembling hands, I approached the chest and opened it. Inside, I found a bundle of old letters yellowed with age. As I read through them, a chilling truth began to emerge. The letters revealed a dark secret about Emily's family. Her father had been involved in illicit activities, and when his actions caught up with him, he decided to take drastic measures to protect his family's reputation. Emily had witnessed something she shouldn't have, a crime her father committed in the dead of night. To silence her, he locked her in the attic, where she slowly succumbed to fear and starvation. My hands shook as I pieced together the horrifying truth. Emily's father had been desperate to hide his crimes, and Emily had paid the ultimate price for his sins. The laughter, the whispers, the shadows, they were all manifestations of Emily's torment, her spirit trapped in an endless cycle of fear and pain. But there was more. One of the letters mentioned a name that sent chills down my spine. My grandmother's maiden name. As I dug deeper, I discovered that my grandmother had lived in this very house as a child. Emily was her sister. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Emily's spirit had been calling out to me, her own blood, to finally bring the truth to light and set her free. The connection between us was deeper than I had ever imagined. Her suffering had reached across generations, drawing me here to uncover her story. With tears streaming down my face, I turned to Emily's spirit. "I'm so sorry for what happened to you. You didn't deserve this. I promise I'll make sure everyone knows the truth." The room grew warmer, and Emily's figure seemed to glow with a soft, ethereal light. The shadows receded, and the whispers faded into silence. For the first time, Emily smiled. A sad, grateful smile. She nodded once before slowly dissolving into the air, her spirit finally at peace. As I stood alone in the attic, I felt a profound sense of sorrow and relief. Emily's story was a tragic reminder of the darkness that can lurk within families, but it was also a testament to the enduring power of truth and love. I knew that my life would never be the same, but I was determined to honor Emily's memory and ensure her story was told. The laughter was gone, but its echoes would forever linger in my mind, a haunting reminder of the past I had uncovered. And as I left the attic, I felt Emily's presence beside me, a guardian spirit watching over her family, finally free.